flipping around. They rush 4. Plenty of time for John. Now squeezes, steps up in the pocket. LA can run inside the 10. Head first. He flies off the 5-yard line.
65 horsepower trap. It might pop wide open, Rats. Get this there! Is that there, Rats? Nice going, baby. Yes, sir, Rats.
Hello, and welcome to the Wild Wild West podcast. I am Richie Richey of the MHRT Network. To my left, we have Coach Defense. And down diagonally, I almost got it. There we go. We have Alex Givens of the Arrowhead Addict. And down, I almost had it. There we go. I got it. Hey, COVID fog. I'm almost done. So I'm going to stick with that one, even though that's not real. And that is Captain Jack. Thank you very much, guys. How are we all doing? Captain?
Wonderful.
Doing good.
Captain, what about you?
I'm doing okay. It's called a Florida quick flick, like when the power goes out and you have to reboot all your crap.
Understood.
So, and trust me, with all the amount of crap that I have on my computer, it takes a while.
Mm-hmm. Is that a Raiders Hawaiian shirt you got on?
Of course
Yes, it is.
Of course it is.
Come
on, man.
Swag, huh?
I'm sorry to say that when you're as old and awesome as I am,
old and awesome, I like it.
Old and awesome, you have a plethora of shirts, and a cornucopia of headgear.
There you go.
So, I'm glad to say, when you're getting tropical every day in Florida, that's what you wear.
This is true.
Well, actually, I was just wearing my my civilian clothes that I just got home from work from, and I'm like, no, I gotta pull on a shirt because that guy wore that crap last week.
Yeah, that's why I wore the good one. I won the good one this week.
I can go get it for you. I can go get it for you if you like.
No. Like I said, I just ate and I don't want to throw up.
Okay. Well, that's what Derek Carr be doing if he gets sacked.
So I got a different shirt on today. This is the on a more serious note, this is the Demaryius Thomas tribute shirt from Mario Batanze. Really, really good guy. He printed a bunch of these shirts and they are for sale. I don't know if he's got a new batch out, but they are for sale, and he is donating that to Demaryius Thomas's favorite charity in Denver. I believe it's the Boys and Girls Club, if I'm not mistaken. And all proceeds are going to charity for that. I believe they still are in the new batch as well. Mario's a great guy. He's been on our some of our pods as well. And this is his design as a direct kind of shout out to Demaryius Thomas, everything he meant to the Broncos. And Demaryius Thomas had a special place in Mario and his family's home and heart. So it meant a lot to him to put something out. And it was a very sad moment for all of us in Broncos country when DT passed.
Awesome. Well, I'm repping the home squad. I got the Wild Wild West podcast shirt.
Nice.
I'm repping the squad today. So
thanks. And for those that are interested, the link for those shirts is in the description.
Yeah.
You can get those if you so choose or are inclined. No, not Hawaiian print yet. Although, not gonna lie, I would totally rock that.
You get a Hawaiian design, I'm definitely in.
Yeah, I would totally rock that.
I'm definitely in.
As long as the Chiefs logo is bigger than the rest of the teams.
Oh, here we go.
Oh.
Here we go.
That's cool. You know,
That ugly red. Everybody said ugly red.
It's bigger every 50 years when they win a Super Bowl.
yeah.
Oh,
Okay, fair enough.
Gee,
I'll
that
save
tomahawk cut
the
deep.
spice for later.
yeah.
So we have a great show for you guys today. We're gonna go over some really, really interesting topics. This is probably one of the most excited I've been for one of our pods, just because of the topics that we're going to be bringing up. All in good fun, sort of. Sort of, where we're going to be bringing up kind of a critique of each other's team, and we're all going to discuss it. And we'd love to hear from you in terms of what you guys' thoughts are. So, Alex, we had a little Twitter bout there back and forth where you had an interesting meme that you fired back at me. Good for you. Do you want to maybe go first in terms of your one position or one area or thing on the Denver Broncos that you think is kind of our team's weakness?
I can only pick one.
I know that sucks, right?
Look, it's a tall order, but yes, just one.
Just one out of both sides of the ball.
Yes.
Ooh, okay.
If we have time, maybe we can go back and do something on the other side of the ball. But yes, just one.
Okay. Well, I guess with that, the biggest thing is I'm gonna have to say, kind of just with the defense and more specifically kind of the front seven. Outside of Chubb, I got Randy Gregory, but they kind of like are unproven commodities in terms of rushing the passer, and then I feel like you guys just kind of lost Harris, which was probably like your biggest staple in the run game, and didn't really recoup much of that loss. I mean, you got DJ Jones, but I just don't think they're the same. You put me on the spot here. Tell me I can only pick one because I had a nice rundown. So I'd say probably looking at the rest of the division, the biggest thing would be the pass rush with the Broncos, solely because Chubb hasn't stayed healthy, and I'm just not totally sold on the Gregory yet. I mean, he kind of benefited from this free agency market and things blowing up. And so he kind of, I feel like, got a little overpaid. And and that's a lot of pressure to come in and get paid that and perform. And I mean, you've seen a lot of guys kind of flame out trying to do that. So I just don't know. I just don't know if that's, if it's going to work.
I mean, I suppose it's fair to say that you don't know if the edges on the Broncos are going to both stay healthy for the entirety of the season. Although I think it's pretty fair to say that for most teams, most of their edges are going to fall for at least a couple games. I mean, I think the only rusher in our division that I can think of that I don't think actually got hurt last season was Max Crosby.
Good point.
Yeah.
I mean, and Captain, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I'm right there. I think Crosby was the only pass rusher within the division that I think that was healthy for all 17 games by and large.
I believe so. I don't recall him being out for anything.
Right, exactly. So when I'm truly analyzing the division, I just think that it's a dare I say a weak argument to call out edge and leverage an injury concern here and there, especially considering you end up with injuries for the most part of the season for most teams. I do think it's fair to say that you don't know the chemistry between the two edges because they've never played together. I think that's completely fair, and as far as I'm concerned, totally fair game. But to kind of go on the injury side, I just think that's not necessarily there. I also think that we had Cooper show some pretty solid flashes for us last year. Reed, who we have brought back, who may not even make the roster this year, to be quite honest, I think has at least proven that he is a good kind of fill-in, stopgap kind of rotation guy. And he does do pretty well against the run from the edge position. So while Malik Reed may not win his one-on-ones a lot or super often from the edge, he is a great run defender from the edge, or at least has improved as a run defender from the edge as his time at the Broncos has progressed. But yeah, I certainly wouldn't have gone there as my 1A for the Broncos. But then again, as a Chiefs fan, you can tell you what, you can target those edges and see how you do.
I have a sidebar question. Are the Broncos running a true 34 base defense, or is it a hybrid?
They do a hybrid. Evero is a hybrid defensive coach, given his background. He comes from kind of a real eclectic group of coaches that have kind of worked with him in the defensive side. He had a couple years under Fangio in San Francisco. He had Wade Phillips for a year there in the Rams. And then he had the guy that's currently on our team, and the name just completely, I've gapped on it, unfortunately. He was a consultant now for the team. So you have to assume that there's going to be some influence there in terms of that as a defensive style. So I'm expecting a hybrid of the 3-4, but not even just a hybrid of the 3-4. I'm also expecting more of a hybrid from the influences within Evero, just because of that eclectic mix. That's right. Sorry, Dom Capers. Thank you, Avatar.
Okay.
Yeah, Dom Capers. That's right. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So do you have a rebuttal to Alex?
I mean, yeah, of course. I guess that, yeah, I shouldn't have stressed the injury component, because I suppose that narrative can apply to anybody or any position group. That was just me trying to be, I guess, civil and nice.
Oh crap! Bullshit.
But I mean, I still would
say
say it's. I mean, I still would say it's. Hold on,
Alex dog is going nuts.
yeah, they're pretty riled up over here too, if you can't tell. I think I just would still stick with it from the fact that Chubb hasn't done much to be a solidified pass rusher comparing the rest of them. I think he had 10 sacks his rookie year and hasn't gotten to that since, and he also benefited from having Von Miller there. And I just don't know if bringing Randy Gregory in gives you that same type of pass rush attack that you had in the past, coupled with the rest of the defense. I think that's the biggest question for the success of the Broncos, at least from a defensive perspective.
Okay.
Yeah. I think there's a fair comment to be made of the fact that there hasn't been a true pass rushing duo that has been equally productive on both ends since Von Miller and DeMarcus Ware was here. I think that's a fair comment. I think we've had flashes where you've had Shaq Barrett kind of step in and really start to shine, and then he left and then really took off when he went to Tampa Bay.
Yeah.
That's the fake Pirates for all the Raiders fans out there. And so you've had this kind of mix where you've had Vaughn and then Vaughn and Chubb work together for a little bit, who had some opportunities, and they could never both stay healthy. Like either one was injured or the other was injured, and they never really stayed healthy together. So I do think there's some fair comments to be made about Chubb needing to kind of show that full year of health. I think that is a fair comment. That said, when he has been healthy, I would push back pretty heavily on that. He has looked the part. So he's either getting double teamed and still beating those 2-on-1s, or he's getting 1-on-1 and he's coming close to winning, or at least winning eventually those 1-on-1 battles against good and solid, like both subpar and elevated competition, which I think is really what you're looking for, someone of Chubb's caliber to show he can do it.
Yeah.
So my actually, this is an interesting one. Has Chubb been a bust so far? I think I'm going to say no, and I'm only going to say no because you can't it's both on the player and on the team to help control injury and workload. So until someone can show me that Chubb has been neglectful of his body in the offseason to put himself in an injury position, I'm going to have to say that it's more on the team than it is Chubb, because the team has to adapt to fit or better fit the player that you have on the roster and ensure that they can stay healthy. You also have to look at the types of injuries you're getting, and if you're seeing groups of the same injuries together across multiple players. And the Broncos have seen multiple years of very similar injuries from a bunch of different players, at which point, from my perspective, that points to coaching or poor coaching as opposed to a player specific thing.
Yeah. Is he still he's still on his rookie contract, isn't he?
Fifth year option right now, yeah.
See, so I for one, I don't think you can label someone a bust till they get through that and you determine, because I mean, even if the Broncos don't sign him back, you'll see how the league values him as a player and as a bust based on who goes and gets him from there. So I always like to try to give someone at least their rookie deal before you call them a bust. But I do agree that, from that type of assessment, I think a lot more, while it unfortunately falls on the player, I think a lot of it has to do with the coaching and just how they scheme and use a player. I mean, you've seen it so many times with rookie QBs that just come in and are pressured to immediately perform and be exactly like they were at whatever school they just got picked from, and it doesn't work out, and then they're just done, And
right.
so I think kind of looking at how, at least from like that quarterback position, I think kind of is a telltale sign for that's kind of being a reason why someone is a bust, is from a coaching scheme and like putting that player in a successful position, or the lack thereof kind of makes them be labeled that,
Robert, I certainly didn't take it that way, and that's why I really like having this great mix of teams in here, because you're going to have questions about the Broncos, and I'm sure Broncos fans are going to have questions about the Chiefs and the Chargers and the Raiders. Ask those questions. I'm not going to take offense to even, we'll say, harshly worded comments. And I have thick skin for that kind of stuff. I think that's part of the reason why we're able to do this show.
That's only because he's Canadian, people. Otherwise, he would just blast all of us. It's his Canadian nicety
Okay.
that is working for him. His Canadian nicety.
I don't know. My relatives go all the way back to like burning the White House in 1812. So I'm not sure how nice we really are. But anywho, in terms of just comments and stuff, I really like having all of the fans come in and ask these questions and make these comments. And if you weren't able to make the show live today, guys, these volleys back and forth, first off, they're super fun. But in addition to that, if you have questions or you didn't like one of our answers, there's a comment section down below in each of these videos on YouTube. I want to hear what you have to say. Didn't like what I had to say? Great. Let me know. It's just down there. So moving on to kind of what I'll kind of say about the kind of Broncos guys' take of the Chiefs.
Yeah, let's hear it.
So I was torn between two. You and I had a brief discussion before the show. And it really was a toss-up for me, because I think that both are completely valid points. I've also seen these points made even by Chiefs fans. So I feel on pretty solid ground when I make these comments. And I opted to go with the one that I think is going to be the most impactful to you negatively this season, and that is the Chiefs running game. I think that when you have lost a speedster like Tyreek Hill that can stretch the field and open up those run lanes in the middle part of the field, I think that not having a running game and not having been used to rely on a running game will be is your biggest weakness. That's funny.
That's pretty good.
I'm decidedly bullying McDuffie right now. Okay, continue, please.
I'm not gonna lie. That's just funny.
That was bold.
But but
he's taking my talking points though.
Right. So I guess what my biggest issue is that you no longer have that speed guy that's going to stretch the field. Nicole Hardman hasn't really done that for you guys, which I believe is what you were hoping out of him. And he really hasn't kind of been that 1A, 1B kind of guy to work alongside Tyreek. So I think you're going to struggle a little bit in the run game. And your O-line isn't traditionally used to, even though you guys did start clicking on the O-line as the season went on, your guys really aren't used to run blocking. It's not been a strength of the Chiefs for a number of years. And I think that's going to be an issue for you guys going forward, if I'm going to be perfectly honest. And because you don't have the same passer, like the wide receivers that you had last year, much like your offensive line, how it really struggled at the beginning of last year and then started to gel as the season went on, I think the chemistry with your wide receivers and the lack of run game is going to really come to bite you this season. And I believe that's going to be the biggest reason why I am predicting that there is going to be some regression from the Chiefs as a result of some of these changes. I mean, at some point, the best teams always regress. I mean, it's just a fact. And I think this is going to be the year the Chiefs do.
Well, respectfully, you are wrong. At least with that. You're probably not wrong about the running game, but I think the Chiefs are going into this season with a plan to emphasize the running game more. They brought in Ronald Jones. They drafted you guys, Jackson Mahomes.
I was gonna say that as well. I was gonna actually give you some props because I said, hey, I got something to help him out. And I would never help out a ketchup and mustard guy, except that I had a dissertation today from my Chiefs fan that was talking about Ronald Jones. So I was waiting for you not to say it. Yeah.
No, he said Jackson Mahomes.
So now I could – never mind. Go ahead.
I thought you were talking about Jackson Mahomes for a second.
I was talking about Ronald Jones.
Rojo?
Of the ex-Steak Pirates.
No, but anyways, I do think that they are planning to emphasize the run game more, and I know, from an interview that Arrowhead Addict had with Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I mean, he went into last season with a lot of injuries and issues, and then it kind of propounded. I mean, he was out for half of it, or at least 6 games, which you could tell kind of ruined the flow of the offense. But at the same time, I mean, since Andy Reid's been there, but definitely more so once they got Mahomes, I mean, they don't necessarily – their offense is ran by passing the ball. I mean, that is what gets their going. That's what gets everything going. That's what they flow through. They run RPO stuff. They aren't necessarily calling a traditional run play. It's, hey, if this backer shoots back and takes a slant, you hand it off. I mean, and that's like what you see a lot of colleges and stuff run now. And it's all set up through the pass, and then you're kind of making the defense wrong, whatever they decide to do. So I get what you're saying about the offensive line not being used to, I guess, traditional run blocking, but at the same time, that's not Andy Reid's scheme. And he doesn't call, full man power, pull a guard and tackle and, things like that. He calls RPO stuff. He calls inside zone, which from an offensive blocking scheme, that is not a big, 5-on-5, like let's pound our 5 against the defense and get 3 yards. That's, everyone's working a zone and the running back's cutting off of that. So I think that they are planning to have a more, I guess, effective running game this year. But I will agree that they need to have that to be successful, at least from the purpose of sustaining the success they've had up to this point.
Right, but last year your top running back was Williams with 558 yards through 17 games. Your second best running back was the oft injured, we'll just call him the law firm name.
And Jarvis Green Ellis.
Yeah, exactly.
Jarvis might feel a certain kind of way about that.
But at the same time, though, I mean, if Clyde Edwards-Helaire, if he was not hurt, if he was there for the full season, I think those stat lines are different. You could tell they decided to stop scheming the run as much when he went down, and Williams, they used him more in the passing game. I mean, which traditionally Andy Reid does anyways. But he
still had 517 rush yards. I mean, which is, don't get me wrong, through 10 games, that's a good clip. But again, the problem is, one, can he hold on to the ball when he is running it? Two, can he stay healthy? Or was last year indicative of a trend that you're going to start seeing from him? So if you can't rely on your running back, and if you don't have a proper or legit 1-2 punch, then you're in trouble. And then on top of that, the other thing that I think that your team is going to struggle with here is, do you know who your third best rusher was?
Probably
running
Mahomes,
back,
right?
Who was your third best? Who was your third best rusher on your team?
Is either Mahomes or McKinnon?
It was Mahomes.
Yeah.
So you had the Waddle himself.
Yeah. Well, hey, that Waddle also beat the Titans.
Rushing the ball for 381 yards last year, and I think that what you've seen from the AFC West this year in the offseason, which this is part of the reason why I selected this as my number one thing, which is you already had the Raiders that had some pretty solid interior defensive line pressure, which Patrick Mahomes showed to struggle with in the playoffs last year. He did. Yeah. And they lost in that Super Bowl there because of the interior pressure of Tampa.
Well, they also had like 4 of their offensive line out. So
look,
I mean, that's...
the reason you can point to the various reasons you'd like, but at the end of the day, the interior defensive line pressure got to Mahomes and threw him off.
Yeah, but at the same time,
right?
If let's say flip it, right? Let's say the Broncos go into a game without 4 of their starting 5 offensive linemen. Are you going to have the same faith? Are you going to have the same faith that they're going to protect Russell Wilson?
They might be improved because that might be an improvement for them.
But we're also not going to be trying to throw the ball every single down to try and throw bombs away because we don't have our linemen, because we actually believe in having a rushing game and a running attack, and that's why we want our linemen. That's what we're like. Most of the offense of the Denver Broncos was predicated off of having a run game, and that's why when the run game, if it was stalled or stopped, that's where our offense really struggled, because we weren't able to kind of break up that interior of the D-line of the opposing teams, and that's where we struggled last year in particular. Now, there's other areas we struggled, don't get me wrong. The last year was not particularly great for us, but at the end of the day, that was the big offensive reason where we struggled, is that when our run game was basically stymied and stopped, our offense stalled. Yeah. And we had a run game, and we had 2 backs on our team that put up legit numbers and across the NFL.
I honestly wanted KC to sign Melvin Gordon this offseason.
Of course you did, because you want a running game, because you don't have one. That's why I said you don't have a running game.
Yeah.
And so when you look at kind of what you guys have done, I'm concerned that that you haven't compensated for the loss of a deep threat to stretch the field and open up those run lanes. But then you've also shot yourself equally in the foot by not bringing in legit running backs to try and force those run plays and force the other team to respect the run, bring the deep backs up to then allow the deep threats that maybe aren't as fast as Tyreek Hill to then get open up in the back end of the field. And that's where I feel you guys have kind of missed a step or missed the mark by not adjusting your offense accordingly, given the offensive skill players that you've missed. I mean, specifically Tyreek Hill and the speed.
Yeah. But I mean, I know I said this last week though, but I just don't necessarily agree that they didn't recoup enough to be the same type of offense, if not a better one this year, if everything goes according to plan and they're healthy. Like I said, they brought in guys that at least are proven and have some sort of relevant stat line in terms of a passing game, and still have Travis Kelce. So Tyreek Hill is hard to replace, but I think they brought in enough people to replace him. But I do agree with you. It's somewhat also going to depend on if they can run the ball better. Because I wrote a big article. The reason they lost to the Bengals is because they couldn't run the ball and were having 2-minute drives and just letting Cincinnati stay in it. I mean, if they had a somewhat decent running game, at least in the second half of that game, they're going to the Super Bowl again. So I agree. I mean, you're not going to get me. I'm not going to stand up here and try to defend their running game, but I do think they brought in pieces to be just as good and successful, at least off from an offensive standpoint, as they were last year. And I would say you can't really discount them until they prove themselves wrong. I mean, with the success they've had in the division and the league as a whole, and anytime you got a Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid, you know they're going to be fine.
What does Coach Defense always say? No matter how dynamic your passing game is, you need a running game to close out a game.
Yeah.
So that's always going to be true. No matter how advanced we get, we still have weather, we still have elements, we still have things that play into it. And when you can run the ball effectively to close out a game in 4-minute drill or 2-minute drill, you'll likely win that football game.
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah, like I said, that is, I mean, in my opinion, the biggest reason they lost to the Bengals and didn't go to the Super Bowl again last year is because they did not stress enough importance in running the ball throughout the year, and then they were just totally screwed when they needed to most. So, you know, I wish you would have picked something more I could have disagreed with, but that would, from a Chiefs fan looking at it, I would tell you the run game's the biggest problem. But you know, I think they've got enough in place, and I think you're gonna see them putting more of a stress on running the ball, more so than they did last year when they had to deal with injuries and kind of ride the Mahomes Kelsey Hill, train to the end.
Well, I never said that I was going to pick something that I knew you could actually disagree with. That's part of the fun of why I picked what I picked, because it was one of those things that I knew I had you euchred when I selected it. Now, in fairness, my second one, and this is just for anyone coming in after the fact, and if you want to maybe push back on this one after we let Coach and Captain have their turns here. My other one was going to be your secondary. Both cornerback and safety. You guys lost some key players on that secondary. You guys drafted McDuffie, so I can't necessarily say that you hadn't done anything to try and fix some of your losses. However, I think it's extremely difficult to replace a secondary player like Tyrann Mathieu, and I think you lost a couple other guys in your secondary that are either have been with you as veterans for a while or had a place on your team and filled a niche role, including enforcer, which I think is, as much as we might not want to admit that that's a legit spot on a team anymore, it is.
Yeah.
So, Coach, over to you and Captain to kind of go the Chargers-Raiders route. Captain, do you want to maybe go first, or Coach, do you want to go first?
Oh, no. No.
Save the best for last. Come on.
No. It's like, because I always get a belly full, and I try to. I think I impart a bit too much. I would love to hear from Coach Defense, because if I could, I'm going to say this and I'm going to shut up. If I could, I would do an 8 Mile on Coach Defense, because I know what he's going to say about our weaknesses. So I would say, I did this, did that, and I know you did. And then he'd be like, and then he'd get off the stage and I would win the contest, because I know what he's going to say about me, but I want to hear it.
Do you? Yeah.
8 Mile, baby.
I'm just saying, I like the 8 Mile. I'm going to start using that.
Yeah.
Are we talking? I mean, I'm a little more hip hop. Are we talking Eminem 8 Mile, or are we talking something else? I don't know.
No, we're talking Eminem 8 Mile, man.
Okay.
We're talking about just turn the tables on the bastard that's supposed to dish you.
Guess what? He does live in a trailer with his mom.
Drop it.
You just call me Papa Doc. Okay, I get it.
Yeah, go Papa Doc. There you go.
Okay. All right. Well, since I'm up on the spot here, I'm going to say for the Raiders, if you had to pick one thing, the uncertainty of your run defense. I would definitely say that from a personnel
Oh my
And
God.
from a personnel, well, I mean, we already know the glaring need in the secondary. We already know that's not an issue. But the reason why I picked this particular topic is because everybody can see from a 30,000 foot view that you have an issue with the secondary. But if it's compounded with your run defense being bad, then you're just looking at an overall bad defense going into the season. So pretty much anybody with a competent run game or competent pass game will give you guys problems and put up points on your defense. And with a new system coming in with McDaniels, no matter how good or bad he is, it's still a new system you have to learn. So can you get into the shootouts as well with teams when you have a horrible defense? And I know this firsthand because we had a top 5 offense last year, but had a top bottom defense. So unless you have a special kid like Justin Herbert that can keep you in games, then it's ultimately going to be an uphill climb every single game. So I would say the most glaring issue for you is the fact that you potentially have an issue with your run defense. So if you have a potential issue with your run defense, if you come in, you play a team like Cleveland, they'll just run you to death and you won't touch the ball. They'll play clock management on you, and they will likely suck the life out of the whole arena and have 45 minutes of time possession, and you will have little to no offense to even be able to run with a new style offense. So you have to pay attention to that aspect of it. And like I said, from a personnel perspective, we don't know if Nick Packer was going to hit. We don't know if Michael Butler's going to hit. You guys you have in house Bilal Nichols and Jonathan Hankins, they haven't been run stopping savants, and Max Crosby's more pass rush than run stop. So it's Chandler Jones. So from a personnel perspective, top to bottom, unless you scheme it up properly, and even still that works to a degree, but a good rushing team is still going to exploit you. So you have to look at it from a perspective of if you have a porous or a subpar run defense, you're likely going to struggle, because if you can't stop the run, then you can't stop the pass, you can't stop anything. So I would say that run defense for me is the biggest and most glaring weakness for you. So if you have problems there, it could be a long season. You could be facing with the Chargers that they faced last year and having to literally put up 30 to 40 points a game to win ball games.
Okay, well, first off, don't ever throw me like that, because the sheer surprise about you going and not saying anything about our right tackle, but you did allude to our secondary, so I knew that was coming. Okay,
right.
So I kind of pop it back to you on that. Well, I can only say to be determined.
Mm-hmm.
Because first off, if we're talking McDaniels, we're talking the offense. McDaniels does not do anything with the defense. I like the fact that Graham, coming over from the Giants, like McDaniels, not just schemes game to game, he schemes series to series. So he will do things seeing what is going on and what is not going on, how to run that. He'll run that. And by the way, if you go to ESPN and you go and see what they say our projected thing is, they're full of crap. They still have us in a base 4-3, and we're going to be in a 3-4. So BSPN is just that, BSPN. Okay. But getting to point, Graham will run a base 3-4, then run a 4-3, then run a 5-2 mixed hybrid, supercalifragilisticexpialidocious type of crap. Okay. And he will mix things up, which is why we are yet to be seen what we will be doing, what our biggest weaknesses on the defense will be. I still think we have a liability at D-back, but yeah, Bilal Nichols is not a great run stop, but I will say Jonathan Hankins certainly is. I will say that the kids that we picked up in the draft are space eaters and are designed to suck up everything in the middle. And I think that we will be okay with Butler, the two Butlers that we got, the kid that we drafted in the other one. Okay. And there's another, the other gentleman that we picked up from LSU and whatnot. I think we'll be okay. Again, to be determined based upon a defensive scheme, because I think the defense. Oh, thank you, Farrell. Thank you. With Farrell and Butler and all those other people that we have, I think that we will be okay because they are more of a cloggers than anything else. You were talking about a run defense. I said, are you not looking in the mirror on that one? Because that was what kept Chargers out of winning a lot of those games, was because they just got ran over like the Interstate 5 on any given Sunday. Because I-5 going through San Diego, you're getting run over.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's a bit of a self-awareness point for me as my team. Watching that Browns Chargers game, even though it was a shootout, was a rough watch. They played that game on NFL Network the other day. Rough watch. I mean, just even hold Cleveland was opening against us at will. It was rough. But I will say this, and I think it plays into the Chargers as well as the Raiders, that two things have to matter when it comes to defense in the NFL. You have to have personnel and scheme. Like, you can have a great scheme. If your personnel is terrible, it's not going to work. If you have good personnel in a bad scheme, still not going to work. So those things have to be in concert in order for you to have.
I got one other thing to add to that, though.
What's that?
It's not just having good personnel; it's having good personnel that fit the scheme.
Well, that was a good
but so many teams and so many GMs run out willy-nilly and grab names on backs of jerseys,
right?
Because they have a name and people know them. So they'll sell jerseys and they'll sell tickets. But that doesn't necessarily mean that name and that player and that jersey belong on that roster in that scheme.
Right.
And I think that that's something that is oft missed. Now, it's also one of the reasons why people are constantly and regularly perplexed by New England. Because New England just kind of goes out and says, yeah, that random dude works.
That's because they bring people in and
who is that guy? And then you look at him like, yeah, he definitely worked. You see what he did? Because they look at system and then they look at fit. And I think that that's one of the things that a lot of people, especially as casual fans and stuff, overlook when we watch games.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. Like I said, it was pretty much a given in what I was saying. I was kind of implying that the scheme, the personnel had to match and be in concert in order for it to work. Like, that's why I called in the question of the Raiders personnel when looking at it from a run defense perspective, because even as a 4-3 as they looked at on paper, I still have questions on who starts and who plays. Then if you said you're going to run a hybrid 34, I have even more questions, because scheme of personnel from a 34 perspective with the team you have currently constructed, I have questions. Who's going to play nose? Who's going to play the edge? Who's going to play interior D lineman positions, and who's good at it? So I think and who can play inside backer?
That's
what I call in the question whether or not it will or will not work, because you have to mesh your scheme in sense with the personnel you have if you don't have great personnel to fit your scheme top to bottom.
Okay. You were talking about a certain Cheatriot team from out New England way.
Cheatriot. Well, you got a coach from there, so he's going to bring the same.
Yeah, your savior. But he also was a coach of the Broncos before, and what did he do?
You know what? F you. I'll get to that point in a minute. Okay, let me go back. Let me go back to what we were saying was the people that we brought in were under the Belichick system. Okay, so they brought in people that were from that side of the coast. They brought in people for scheme fits, having players that fit in. And let me see, McDaniels comes in and he gets people that fit his offense. Okay. And by the way, and I said this before, in case you guys, this is like a rerun. They are running the Fairbanks Earhart offense, which they ran in 2016. And Derek Carr was an MVP candidate until Donald Penn forgot the block on one play. Okay. They brought in Graham, who also had that fit in that coast, and they will fit in guys under his scheme so that they can plan to do things that may not be the most glitzy, but they're planning people to fit the right scheme. I like the fact that Ziegler is plugging players to fit the scheme that his offense coordinator / head coach and his defensive coordinator wants to run. Okay. So in that respect, I like that. Instead of having, Mark Davis go into either the Hooters or the PF Chang's, look at a bimbo with some Hooties and say, oh yeah, and by the way, yeah, get Gruden over here and Mayock, and we're just gonna blow our draft, things like that. That's a visual. Thank God that we're you guys are mostly seeing this or hearing it. You didn't see what I did, but anyway, I like the fact that this revamped, the new Raider way has connotations of how to do things right. Yeah. And by the way, Robert, it's me on my hat.
Oh, okay.
That is me. That's a pin. That's a pin of me.
Okay. Yeah, I would also argue just the counterpoint what you said about adding scheme fits. It typically takes a new coach about a year and a half, maybe 2, to pick up everybody that he needs for his scheme. So you have incumbents people that they pick up in the free agency market this cycle. So it's gonna probably take another year for them to really get everybody in house that they truly want in their scheme.
Well, you got to say too, you talk about bringing in guys to fit the scheme, but you also got to make the guys that are on your roster fit the scheme. And for example, you're saying they're going to move to a 3-4. Well, Max Crosby's played in a 4-3 up to this point, and even if it's may not necessarily be different. It's some parts of it are gonna be totally different than what he's used to. Or like Perryman played middle backer in a 4-3 defense. He's gonna be an inside guy in a 3-4. Those are just all things that you want to ensure that the guys already there are gonna fit the scheme too.
And actually, that's a good point, Mr. Gibbons. That's why as soon as Graham was announced as the defensive coordinator, his first phone call was to Mr. Max Crosby.
As it should
said,
that's exactly it.
Fair enough.
I'm serious because Crosby was like, oh man, what the foxtrot. Mm-hmm. But Graham had been talking with Crosby a couple years ago before he was drafted, and they had a good rapport based upon before he was even drafted. Mm-hmm. He says words to this effect. He says, "Don't worry about it, Slugger. I got you covered. You're going to thrive in my system." I'll take it from the coach, telling that's not just blowing smoke up somebody's ass. That's telling him we're going to make sure that we do things that you can do to make you better. That's why Ngakoue got sent to the Colts, because he wouldn't have fit in this scheme. So we got a cornerback that we needed out of him. Again, it's all about production and how you do. And yes, it will take about a year to get things set and to embellish upon it and to make it better. But if you're going to go about things that are changing, okay, the Broncos have changed, we have changed. The Chiefs are actually, they're going to change a bit, where Bieniemy is actually going to be doing more running this year, per a fan of mine that is a KC guy that knows about it. That's why they had that offsite about letting more of the power running, more bringing Ronald Jones in there with Clyde Edwards-Helaire and changing some of that scheme. They're going to be changing that over. And then with the Garglers, they just got to change being the Garglers.
We're going to make you eat those words this year. I'm letting you know that right now. We're going to make you eat those words. That's all I'm going to say.
Well, I think if you're going to say any of those things with the Raiders, I think the biggest question is, first off, I think losing Philon is going to be one of your – I think it's going to be a bigger loss this year, not having him back.
If he's gone. If he's gone.
Yeah, well, no, but he's not currently on your roster as far as
he's currently not on anybody's roster because he had an ACL with the last game of the season.
Right. Mm-hmm. But my point being is that he was that real run hybrid / pass rush guy that Coach, I think, was alluding to, that you guys currently don't have solidified on your roster. But that is kind of a side point. If you pivot and look at the traditional 3-4, the best 3-4s, you end up with 2 defensive ends on either side that can kind of both run stop and pass rush. So when you look at the Broncos, when we were in our heyday on the defensive side of the ball for those multiple years, we had Derek Wolfe and Malik Jackson. we kept Wolf, but Malik Jackson was actually the guy that was more of a wrecking ball compared to Derek Wolf more often than not. And the question then is, so you have your quote unquote Malik Jackson, the wrecking ball, and Max Crosby. The bigger question is, who's the other D end that can consistently get pressure to the backfield in that traditional 3-4, even in a hybrid, if you go to hybrid style and start mixing it up, because you're still going to need those the DN pressures to come in from the middle, which will also help whatever edge pressure you get as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think we might be doing you if he comes in. I said I think that Farrell, the guy that was actually the number 4 pick in the draft, and everybody was hating on him because he was picked so high. I think that he's going to actually have a good year this year. It's going to be a make or break year for him because he wasn't dealt. There was talks of being dealt for the draft. Now this is his last year, so I think he's going to come in there with a balls to the wall attitude. It's like, this is my last year, and if I play well, I'm going to get paid by somebody. Okay, and Jack Kenna reminded me as well that he's going to linebacker, so he might be spelling Chandler Jones on that type of edge suck up type of thing as well. Farrell going to linebacker as well. So there's going to be a lot of different moving parts here, fitting people in. All I can say is if they don't do, okay, and I can't remember who the schmuck defensive guy was that had some statues playing that were defensive linemen that were playing outside linebacker for and I can't remember which defensive coordinator it was. It was like Tyler Brayton and Gerald Irons Jr. This was maybe 10 years ago, and they tried him at linebacker. And you probably have a better time getting free food out of a Chinese restaurant than have these guys play effectively at linebacker. Okay, it just didn't work. It didn't happen. So hopefully, we'll see what.
Okay.
I like that we are trying to make things happen effectively.
So we had the run stuffing as kind of coach's take on the Raiders. Kind of, I actually think it's an interesting one because I think when you look back at, I do, and no, it's a TBD, yet to be seen, and I think that's a completely fair kind of generalization, a comment to make. Captain, what do you have about the Chargers in terms of what you think their biggest hole, weakness, challenge is going to be coming up this season?
Bring it.
No, actually, you're gonna be very surprised there, Coach D. I was looking and I said, okay, well, I got homework to do, so I had a little bit of time at work while I snuck into another office and looked at the internet. Because remember, guys, in my office, I don't have access to the internet. Okay, I don't.
You $0.30 for real.
Yeah, for real. Mm-hmm. So I went into another room and I'm like, okay, I got to pull some stuff out for the Garglers, and it was information, and I was like, 5 biggest need for the Chargers. I'm like, oh, good, a good baseline. It was about last year. It was about last year. They were talking about that they needed somebody to be on the opposite side of Bosa, and that the kid that you guys led away, he said he was a question mark,
right.
And that's true. Okay, but he played well, so that actually came to fruition, and they addressed that with the signing of 50 who. Okay, so that has been, in theory, fixed. In theory, air quotes. Okay. But the one thing that I had, and I was looking up the Garglers again on the website, and I looked at BSPN, and they actually have a good laydown of the what do you call it? The
depth
team.
chart.
Thank you, depth chart.
Mm-hmm.
And there was 2 things that struck me on your depth chart. Have you looked at it recently?
I look at it constantly. I know by heart.
Okay. What do you realize that there are Q's next to 2 people on your depth chart, and it's May?
That's been like that for months.
Okay. Well, it couldn't have been like that for too long, because One of the cues is by 50 Who, and the other cue is by Simmons at linebacker, which put a thought in my mind.
Simmons?
Murray.
Yeah.
Murray.
Oh, Simmons, Murray, whatever.
Okay.
You say
Same
Simmons,
guy.
I say Murray. The point is, what has been stopping, and I'll be kind, the Chargers.
Mm-hmm.
I'll say it for you because you look livid every time I call you the Garglers. What has been stopping the Chargers from getting in is that they get in their own way. They have injuries at the wrong time. They have stupid plays at the wrong time. They have coaching miscues at the wrong time. It's like the Keystone Cops are playing powder and blue. If you take an old movie that from the silent era, and instead of having the Keystone Cops, in fact, somebody should do this that has the video skills. Take one of those silent movies from the Keystone Cops and put the powder blues on. Well, by the way, I love the powder blues. One of the best uniforms there is. Put the powder blues on the Keystone Cops, and that's what you got from the Los Angeles Chargers, because they're oft injured, they screw up at the wrong time, and they just can't get out of their own way. And the one thing that I can say about both of the gentlemen's teams up top is that at the beginning of the season, every season, the pundits that are paid astronomically, that have no friggin' clue, they love the Chargers and they love the Broncos. These guys say
hold on. That's not true. That's not true.
Yes, it is.
No, not last year.
Well,
that's not true. That's not
true. 1 year out of the last however many.
I'll give you that.
They love the Broncos. And
arguably, you could say that for the Raiders too, though.
And it's always because look what they did. Look what they did. Oh my God, the Broncos got Russell. They finally got it. They're going all the way, baby. And then it's did you see what the Chargers did? They get Khalil 50 Who, and they get J.C. Jackson. They overpaid for J.C. Jackson, and they get this guy, and they got Spiller, and oh my God, print up tickets. Don't worry about the playoffs. Just go ahead and make reservations for Arizona for the Super Bowl because we're going to be there. And it's totally. It's a love fest. And you guys should be proud of that because it is, aside from last year, like Richie says, it's every year. The Chargers and the Broncos are the greatest. And it just doesn't pan out. So
it's kind of been like that for the Raiders too, though, hasn't it?
They don't do a whole lot of Raiders because the Raiders do so much loving on themselves.
Yeah. Well, think about it though. Since
a very long-winded what is going to happen. I'd love to see the Chargers just, not like they normally do.
I agree. I agree with that. But the one point I want to make, I don't think we overpaid for J.C. Jackson. I think we actually played right around the market value because the corners that got paid after him got paid way more, and it's way more a punitive cap hit if you ever traded that person away. So I think we got a pretty decent market value for J.C. Jackson, in my humble opinion, for a number one corner.
I mean, he's like the 10th. Like the 10th
highest paid. Right, exactly. Right now,
for the most sought after corner in the free agency class, I'd say that's a pretty good signing. I mean, when you look at the rest of them,
right?
Normally you're signing someone that age, and you're ideally, or not ideally, but you're gonna end up resetting the market, right? I mean, look at Christian Kirk, had no business getting paid what he got paid.
$80
was in that. I mean, that's just how it goes. I mean, whoever just happens to be a free agent at the right time, like more than likely that team signing them is going to be resetting the market. So I'd say that's a pretty good win. I was pretty upset, honestly. I really thought KC would do that, especially for what he signed for. But
yeah, we can take.
He wanted to win.
Yeah, right.
I don't know. I don't know why he went to LA, but he did want to win.
Well, to get back on the topic though, Cap, I definitely, as a retort to what your claims were, I would definitely say that they're warranted, and it's been the history of the Chargers. I would like to say that in a lot of times, a lot of cases, we've been snake bit. You know, we've had all the right things going for us at the time the season starts, and then for one reason or the other, self-inflicted or injury, it seems to always fall apart. I definitely will give you that aspect of it. Now, I will say from a long time coming, our offense is where it's been the best I've seen in quite some time. I mean, we have to go way back to the Damon Tomlinson days, and that was a running attack versus a passing attack. So having the type of quarterback we have in Justin Herbert, and with Joe Lombardi being our offensive coordinator, you know, because I always say that if you have a defensive-minded coach, you got to hit a home run with your OC. So, and I really feel like the Chargers hit a home run with the OC, and Staley has to have no worries, no ills about the offensive side of the ball, because Lombardi is in full control of that. He could, honestly, truly, I hope we can cash in soon with him, because he might be a head coach here in the next few years, you know, honestly, because he runs really good offense. But overall, like I said, if we can, you know, stave off the early mistakes, don't be too high aggressive with the fourth downs with Staley's first year coaching. You know, I think those things can be corrected. You know, but in the mindset, I think the mindset is the biggest thing, the biggest problem the Chargers have had over the years when it comes down to having the wherewithal or the fortitude to win games and be tough down the stretch. You know, so I think Staley has brought that particular mindset in with him, along with the players that he brought in this offseason to fit his scheme. So I think the toughness and the leadership he's going to get from Khalil Mack and Sebastian Joseph Day, and Cal Van Noy, and those guys is going to instill a level of confidence in the guys that are incumbent to say that we can do this. We can be the team that everybody says we could be at the beginning of the season. So this is really, if our biggest problem, honestly, truly, is mindset and mental fortitude, I think we're in good shape. I mean, if the only thing people can really truly pick on is whether or not we can be mentally tough for 18 weeks, that I like our chances just as much as anybody else. So I'm right there. I'm ready to go.
But you're still going to say that you're going to whoop us on week one. I say, dude, I go out there. I never just throw out all of the vitriol. I sit there and I watch, because I can't control anything.
Oh,
okay?
well, listen, I say that as a fan.
I will stay until there's triple zeros on the clock.
I'm right there with you. Because as a coach and a football player, I honestly resonate that with you fully. I just say that as a fan, just kind of add, you know, spice to the rivalry. But I know that anything is possible. Any given Sunday, anything is possible in true football fashion. So yes,
especially
I do.
interdivision.
Yeah, right.
Especially interdivision.
Yeah, you have to add that fire. You got to come with the smoke. If you don't come with the smoke, why are we here? So we'll have a pretty smoke until we have the fire for week one. That's all I'm saying.
But I said I will be there week one, corner end zone, 2 tickets for $2,400.
Just check your Twitter, because I'm definitely going to ask you when things happen wrong for you.
Hey, if I'm watching the game, I won't see that until probably hours after the game, because I'm watching the game.
I hear you.
I think one of the next interesting pieces, just as we're kind of volleying back and forth, particularly, we've had some heavier defensive style conversations here. Coach, you had an influence in that, I'm sure, somewhere along the line. But we've certainly leaned more defense here. I actually think that one of the interesting things that, and again, if you guys are interested in us kind of going into these things, but wide receivers compared to secondaries might be a really interesting topic for us to really deep dive into and get some other additional feedback, because I think there can be some really, really interesting matchups within our division, especially since our collective division has retooled a lot of our defense. I mean, it seems this offseason it was an arms race between the AFC West to see who could retool the most, the fastest, the biggest, the best. And I think that's going to be a really interesting discussion to say, you know, I have this wide receiver. I believe that they're going to match up against anyone you have, and, you know, kind of juxtapose the various secondaries versus wide receivers. And also, I think it's, you know, I think too many people only pin wide receivers against secondaries. I also think you need to factor in the front seven in terms of how much time that quarterback's going to have to throw the ball. Because I think too many fans and too many analysts look at wide receivers and secondaries and then just kind of blow everything out of proportion. When a team is built, they look at everything, and they're looking at the pressure that front seven or even front five can bring, and we need to factor that in as well. So I think that'd be a really interesting comment, guys. If you really like that as a potential topic for next week or the week after, down below or hit us up on Twitter, and we can take those comments and factor that in to the show itself. The other one that I think that's really interesting that's come up this week, guys, to pivot away even just from our division in general, is the Denver Broncos are up for sale, which I'm sure you guys are well aware. There's a short list of 4 or 5 owners that are kind of in that, short
the
list.
Walmart family trying to buy it.
For me?
The Waltons, like Walmart.
I'm all for a rollback on beer prices at Mile High. But moving on from that in general, there's been some updates on ownership situations in Seattle, where there's speculation that the Seattle Seahawks are going to be up for sale pretty soon. There's also speculation that, there has been news in the last 2 weeks, really heating up in the last 3 or 4 days, of the Commanders.
Mm-hmm.
And their owner being forced out for various reasons. And there's also been some discussions around the Miami owner, who is noticeably quiet, but I mean, let's be real, with some of the allegations and court cases being pushed through are also coming up. And also, just because this is extremely relevant to a good portion of the audience here, John Gruden's court case was not thrown out and is going to trial. So I wanted to kind of throw all that into one big crock pot here for the podcast and everyone. And I'd love to hear everyone's general thoughts on it. I'd love to hear comments. I'd love to hear kind of what everyone has to say. Coach, do you want to maybe go first and kind of give your take on some of those? I mean, all of these are massive, massive things within the league when you have things that go all the way up to ownership. So what's your take on it?
Well, from the Seattle perspective and the Broncos, that's just a normal sell, because I think the Seattle Seahawks owner passed away.
Mm-hmm.
So they're just looking for new ownership. So they're letting the front office run the organization right now. And I think it's in a trust. And they're looking to revamp and maybe potentially sell an organization to another owner. Of course, the Broncos in a similar situation. Y'all are looking for a new buyer. But when coming down to Commanders, the level of allegations levied on this team is just fine. I find it funny. I talked a little bit about this in my podcast. I find it funny that it didn't come down to being a contentious issue with the owners until money was involved.
Right.
When they started missing money, then all of a sudden we want to take a vote.
Wasn't burning the pockets, man.
Yeah. When you hit me in my pocket, then I got a problem. I don't have an issue with you being a hostile work environment or anything like this. Any of these allegations that are damning, I don't care about that. I just want to hear about my money. Like once you affect my money, all of a sudden we want to take votes. We want to poll the entire owner group and say that do we have enough votes to take this to board? So I find that interesting. Now the Stephen Ross thing, now that still has to do some deep dive, and I think that's kind of tied to the Flores lawsuit, where did he or did he not tamper with Tom Brady in his free agency period? Did he pay Flores to potentially take games and things of that nature? Now that's a lot of dirty pool as well. So if he's caught in that particular net of trouble, then he might be on the chopping block as well. But yet again, it wasn't about the money; it was just about I guess you can say poor tactics, that's or illegal tactics in a sense. Now, I will say this. Now, I'm curious because of the whole issue with Gruden and their former president and Mark Davis. Will the fallout or the backlash from the Commanders situation kind of lean in or kind of spill over to the Raiders? Because they were kind of caught in the net with that as well. So, and the Gruden particular lawsuit is going to go to trial. So will that stuff start to come out? So will more damaging material come out on the Raiders as the Gruden lawsuit becomes to light and evidence starts to become public? So would a fall off from that be an issue with the Raiders? So I'm curious about that as well. But that's my overall take. I think Snyder's on the way out, which I think is very, and we also see that he used $100 million for land for a new stadium.
Yeah, like an hour away from DC too, or something like.
It was. I'm like, you could be selling your team here in short order. You spend $100 million for land, you might not be the owner in a year.
Yeah, but that land was actually down by where their headquarters is anyway.
Right. Yeah, I know what Dumfries is. It's my area, so I know exactly where it is.
The Washington commuters, they moved.
Yeah. I just thought it was funny that you went ahead with the transaction, knowing that you had the looming cloud of maybe selling the team over your head. I thought that was funny.
Yeah.
Before we go over to Captain, who'll be, I think, just given some of the circumstances here, I'll have Captain go last, just because it's some of the news is directly impacting to the Raiders. Alex, what do you think?
Yeah, just kind of piggyback off of Coach's take on it. I definitely think that Snyder's out in Washington. I mean, if they kind of forced the Panthers owner out, a couple of years ago, I mean, same thing's going to happen there. It's just a matter of time, not if. But I do think that the interesting thing, with all these potential sales, I mean, we know the Broncos are up for sale, but if one of these other teams comes up around that same time, you're going to see some pretty big spikes in overall value of these franchises. And I mean, one of them's going to go for it's going to be the most expensive franchise ever purchased. And it's going to kind of be a race to see. I mean, even, which I always just find crazy. Like, I think a few years ago, at least from KC local perspective, the Royals were sold for like $3 billion or something ridiculous. And you're like, what? Because like you go to a game now and you're like, where are they making this money? And they're talking about now the Broncos are being closer to 5, if not a little over. And you get one of these other teams that comes up for sale, then that's going to be even more. Or someone buys the Broncos for $5 billion, and then Seattle comes for sale. Like it's going to be crazy to just see how much these franchises cost. And then from the legal ongoing legal things, I'm just going to be I kind of I didn't assume any of those would really get dismissed or anything. So it's just going to be interesting to see how those play out. More so, I don't really know much about the Gruden thing just because who cares? Like, I'm more so interested to see the Brian Flores just because of some of the stuff that's been alleged in that, because of those, if more facts come to light with that, I mean, you're probably going to see a forced sale of Miami if you have an owner of the team like directly affecting the integrity of the league and telling his coach to tank and then firing him and things like that. So it's just going to be interesting to see how those play out in the courts.
Yeah, I think the Commanders is the most interesting of the situations because you had the owner of the Panthers being forced out for a combination of some rather questionable comments as well as poor work environment, proven quote unquote. But at the end of the day, when you look at what happened with the Commanders, I would argue that the initial allegations of the Commanders far exceeded that I heard, at least from the Panthers. I mean,
I think so.
Like, and the sad part about it, from my perspective, is that the exploitation of the cheerleaders seemed to be a footnote. To me, that was the most appalling element of the entire thing, was the exploitation of the cheerleaders and what they did. I mean, that like, there are some other things in there that were unacceptable, and I didn't think that they were appropriate. I didn't think they were becoming of the league, and all of those things I think are true. Frankly, it also shows just piss poor character, which again I have issues with from that perspective as well. But the one thing that has no room in the NFL for is the exploitation of the cheerleaders and the trading of nude and semi-nude photos. The just that whole thing that they had going was just like appalling. I don't even have another, like, I have other words that I can't say live on the pod, but it was appalling. And the fact that the league did nothing for over a year is, I mean, I'm gobsmacked with the fact that they did nothing about that. And then now other information comes out where Snyder may have withheld, not even definitively, may have withheld finances back from the league. You know, because he is of such high quality character, given the already proven allegations, that is the shocking part to all the other owners. And now they're taking a vote on whether or not they think he should remain within the ownership circle. It does make you question what other information was with that email cache. I think if you're going to be perfectly honest with yourself, you have to start wondering how many other owners are going to find themselves within the Gruden lawsuit and discovery now that it's going to trial.
That's a good one, Rich. That's what I'm curious.
Because, I mean, I hate to sound, tinfoil hat all the way up here in Canada, but at the same time, why else would all of these owners have allowed Snyder to continue and not voted back then if there wasn't damning evidence of all of them? And now that the Gruden lawsuit is clearly moving forward, you have to start wondering who else is going to be found in that email cache. What other owners are going to be caught in the crossfire? And moreover, are you going to see prominent owners? I mean, that top band within the NFL. I'm not trying to accuse anyone, but I'm saying like the owners that we're all thinking of when you hear that, your Robert Krafts, your Jerry Jones, your that top.
Both of those guys have had some, sort of
already
stuff coming on. So like, yeah.
No, but that's what I'm saying is that these cream of the crop owners that are used as poster childs, if you will, for the ownership within the NFL. Some of these other owners just stay behind the scenes, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They just kind of like say, "What do you mean I'm a billionaire?" And they pop their collar and sit up in the box, and do nothing in terms of promoting the league. But then you have the voice boxes of the NFL, your Robert Krafts and your Jerry Jones, who have taken on that poster child of the NFL role. Well, if they're found in these caches and they're found to have been exchanging these images and they're found to have been volleying back and forth as part of the Gruden lawsuit, then that explains an awful lot potentially as to why that original email cache was kept out of the public eye.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to be very, very interesting to see what happens and what becomes of all of this. So I think it's going to be very, very interesting. I do think that if you're going to look at any other of the owners and any other issues that we've kind of brought forward here, I do think that the biggest issue that's going to come of this is going to be the Miami one, as you guys alluded to. When you impact the integrity of the game directly, and if that information is found to be credible, that's going to be pretty hard for the NFL to turn their back on and not do anything about.
Agreed.
I do wonder if the NFL is going to try to save face and pull kind of a, go past go and maybe fine and hinder the franchise of the Dolphins, but not force the owner out.
I don't know. I think, I think also given the racially charged allegations behind some of it, it's not going to be that easy, just to find.
Yeah, but you have to prove the racially charged allegations as being directly racially charged.
Yeah.
Specifically, for example, if I go to anyone and say, "Hey, I want you to throw the game," I'm not making those comments necessarily because the person is of different ethnicity to me. I'm making those comments because I believe it's advantageous to my franchise.
Yeah.
Right.
Which I mean, obviously
race is being brought into some of this. Now, the question is, was race an issue in it or not? And I think that's an interesting piece. And I think that that's something that needs to be explored. Frankly, it needs to be rooted out if it is. But at the end of the day, it may be a coincidence rather than the root cause. And I think that you have to prove that it is in fact directly related to race to make those allegations, because I just think that this is a crooked owner. Yeah. I mean, looking at the Dolphins, I just think this dude's crooked. I just think he wanted to tank for Tua. It had a great marketing meme. And I think that that's what he was ultimately looking for. And funnily enough, he didn't even need to do what he did because he got Tua anyway, and he's not looking.
Well, that's the thing. It was a tank for Burrow that didn't work out because he knew Burrow was going to go first. Then it ended up being tanked with Tua at sloppy seconds.
Right,
Mhm.
right.
Mhm.
But the original media meme though was Tua,
Yeah.
right?
Start of that whole year was tank for Tua.
Yeah. Like the original media narrative was Tua. And I mean, I agree with you, Coach. I mean, Burrow was clearly the prize or the belle of the
Well,
ball
I mean,
in
at
that
the
draft.
start of that year, no one knew who Joe Burrow was.
Yeah, I mean, but even looking at the NFL, I mean, if you're looking at what Joe Burrow has done at the NFL level, he was the belle of the ball from that draft. He was worth anything and everything to get that number 1 pick because those types of quarterbacks just don't grow on trees.
Mhm.
Captain, over to you.
Bring us home.
Well, I tell you, I really can't add too much more. I will just try to give the last seasonings on the steak that's been sizzling. So really good things here. There's gonna be some heads rolling. The machine that lobs off the heads, Le Guillotin, is going to go after all the assholes in the NFL. They are coming for you. It's going to be Robert Kraft and his rub and tug. It's going to be Jerry Jones, who just butchers the English language, and I could say a lot more, but Jerry has friends, and I'd like to, keep mine. But all of these things, Kroenke, who's a billionaire, and the new owner of the Broncos, who is a billionaire, allegedly, and the new owner of the Seahawks, who are billionaires. It's a billionaire boys club. And I know that Peggy says this as well. It's the boys club, and it's unfortunate that it is just a boys club. But that's the way these guys have played, and that's why they like to squeeze out and be, the ingrates and the sexist a-holes that they are, because that's just the way it is. And until things change, it's going to remain that way as well. So maybe there will be some sort of comeuppance. Maybe that they will have, some ownership interest with, some of the ladies out there that will probably try to make sure that you're not throwing TNA pictures of your cheerleaders around and they're being bounced about the league. And that's just wrong. And it's just the way it is. It's wrong.
Right.
Okay. But of over 500,000 to 650,000 emails, and 3 to 5 all dealing with John Gruden are the only ones that come out, folks. Look at the percentages there. 500 to 650,000 emails, and I'm going to give you 5 that call DeMaurice Smith Michelin lips or say something bad about the gay player that came out of Missouri, or say something bad about the NFL referee that's the chick, because it hits on the spots that you want to hit. Now, whether Gruden was saying things bad about DeMaurice Smith personally or racially, I think it was more personal than anything else, but that doesn't matter to this point. It's out there, and he got fried because of it, okay? And all of this is a stinking ledger and a stinking orifice for the entire league. And I'm glad to see that it's going to go to trial. And I really hope that Gruden has enough money to let it go to trial and let the discovery come out, because a lot of people are going to be running away and trying to hide, and you can't hide on discovery. So we'll see what happens. But I'm glad to see all of this. But again, in the final thought, Mark Davis, I don't think it's going to be a lot from those emails, Coach, but the latest accusations about what's been going on in Raiderland, I think that's what is probably going to get him.
I disagree.
You do?
I disagree. I actually think that from what I've seen so far and the evidence presented and the information that's there, it's a lot of circumstantial nonsense. The only stuff that I've seen so far that has to be proven that could actually be an issue is the lady that stepped forward with the legitimate HR issue. But the problem with that, though, is that often doesn't end up making its way up to the owner. That is handled within.
But the guy that was the interim president was the guy that was in charge of legal affairs in the administrative offices, and that's why it kind of got wiped.
Right,
so
but
that's why you're saying, "Hey, I brought this up to the owner." That he was covering his 6.
Did he? He has to be able to. So
the allegations were made, though.
Sure, the allegations can be made, but like for example, in full disclosure, my family comes from the legal field. There are others that are within our sphere that come from the legal field, and a general counsel, which is what the gentleman that you're referring to from the Raiders, that's his role. That was his original role within the Raiders organization, is in charge of all legal affairs for the organization. And so he would have had that information come across his desk. Now, it would have passively been brought up to Mark Davis. Now, the one thing that the Davis family has a reputation for, aside from strip clubs and other things, is
the son has the reputation.
No. Well, his son has the Davis name, so I'm simply putting that on Mark there. But both Davises, including Mark, like Mark is in lockstep as far as I've seen from his father in that respect. He has no patience for those who abuse women, like that much. So as much as the Raiders have kind of the bad boy reputation, if you will, within the NFL, the Davis family has long had a reputation of standing by women's rights and promoting women within the NFL. I mean, Amy Trask being so senior within the Raiders organization.
We'll go.
No, but like well before that was even something that was brought up as an initiative, if you will, within the NFL, speaks to character of particularly Mark's father, in terms of, looking for talent regardless of gender, right? So when you look at that, I think that speaks volumes from a character perspective. Even if they are a rival of the Denver Broncos, I think that speaks to the character of the former owner. Now, when you look at what's happening here, all of these other things are really weak arguments that I saw in the New York Times article. Overpaying your taxes, well, that's the accounting department's job, and if they made a mistake, that's not on the owner. Other issues that come up within HR, that's on the HR manager or the HR director's job, and that almost never makes it to the owner. Now, the only thing that might make it to the owner is consistent HR complaints when it's brought up in like maybe board meetings or senior managerial meetings. However, you'd have to prove that, and you'd have to then prove that the person in charge brought it up as a recurring issue, or if it was brought up as we've had a couple bad apples and they've been dealt with. Because you have to prove one way or the other. It's just a fact. And if you can't prove that they have been brought up and not dealt with, then that's not on the owner.
Yeah, well, you also need to argue about Snyder, because Snyder didn't actually do these things himself, but he's the owner. So everything typically rolls uphill in that situation. All the stuff that just goes on within your organization as a whole is still on your watch. Mm-hmm. So you have to look at it from that perspective too. If all these things went on in this organization, he can't turn a blind eye and say, I didn't know nothing was going on. This was his job. This was his job. It never came across my desk. You're still the owner. You still have to fall on the sword in a sense. So you can
fall on the sword, but he's already fired the guy that was responsible for that after doing an audit of the organization and having items brought to his attention.
Yeah, well, so did Snyder, and he's still in the news.
No, but Snyder was different. Snyder had cheerleaders that were on like a pay-to-play type thing on a private jet and other things like that came out in emails. That is a whole different level of shady and unacceptable.
Yeah, I'm not talking about the levels or the amount of damage that he's done to himself. I'm just saying just the overall the PR nightmare of it. Just no matter how much, if you have 10 allegations versus 2, it's still going to be, I guess, a black eye on the owner because that's his organization. It's like being the president of anything. If you're the president, no matter if you didn't do anything all together, you're still going to be the one they're going to look at. Like it was under your watch. You need to answer for this.
100%. As a leader or a manager, you need to make sure that you don't put yourself out there and do things that are absolutely inappropriate or unacceptable. I mean, that's a given. I mean, putting comments and putting things in writing or video or whatever of doing things and treating people a certain way, that's on you. That's a decision you have made to do those things, and you need to kind of own that, right? But to look at something over a 10 or 15 year span and then consolidate them all into like a 1 or 2 month period and pretend that they are all here and now and this very moment, I think is a little bit disingenuous, and I think it doesn't represent someone's character appropriately. And I think we just need to be very, very cautious and careful that over our lifetimes, I'm sure that the collective group has said a few things at a few instances that were like, ooh, that was not good, or I didn't really mean it the way it came out, or you've said something to a spouse or a girlfriend, they're like, that wasn't necessarily what I really meant to say. I was kind of pissed off in the moment. And if someone were to go through and audit your life over the course of when you were, depending on your age, a teenager all the way to like your mid 20s or early 30s, which is really what we're talking about, because the Gruden emails go back 10 years, right? Mm-hmm. When he was at ESPN. So if you take a 10 or 15 year span and consolidate it and all bring it into one spot, you're probably going to have some things that you wish or ought not got brought out to the public and say, yeah, I'm not super proud of that particular moment. And you don't necessarily want that brought out in the public eye. Now, I can honestly say that I've never had anything said in writing or publicly that John Gruden said, but that's kind of besides the point. The point is that there's going to be embarrassing moments that we've all had and things we've all said that we wish we hadn't. And we just need to be very, very mindful that when all of that is consolidated in a 10-minute soundbite from a 10-year period to make it look like it was all said yesterday is quite disingenuous and not accurate.
I'm going to jump in here real quick for Jack. And Jack, I want to say this as well. Richie, I don't know where you got Al Davis and strip clubs. Okay.
No, I'm referring to his son.
Okay. Even Mark, strip clubs. I'd be very envision as to what the strip. Mark Davis is PF Chang's and Hooters. Okay, because going to a strip club for Mark Davis would entail him paying money, and Mark Davis is too fucking cheap. Sorry, to go to strip clubs, and I apologize that I just did an OG that's swearing on the show. He's not a strip club guy. He's a PF Chang's and Hooters guy because that's his speed. Okay,
right.
He's a cocaine guy from the LA. That is true from his younger years. But I don't know about a strip club connection. So that's why I think Jack Kent was trying to get you on that. I've never heard of that.
Well, you guys are in Vegas, so
he is in Vegas. Like I said, he's PF Chang's and Hooters, buddy. I'm telling you, you want to see Mark Davis, go to Hooters or PF Chang's, and you will see Mark Davis. I guarantee you. Okay. But the other thing about the I applaud you in the fact you said that the Raiders are very adamant about their stance on women and beating and things along those lines. It goes back to Fred Biletnikoff as well, because I go to the Biletnikoff event every year, the Tracy's House of Hope and all of those things. But by the same token, they still hired Tom Cable, and they still have a bunch of other things that have happened. So they've looked away at times as well. So
I think that's fair. That's a fair comment to
they
make.
profess, but they let things happen that is not quite right. So again, we'll see. And by the way, the reason why Marcus went to KC was because Al said to Marcus, "Stop playing around with OJ's wife."
Yeah.
And
So
that's why he ended up in KC.
Guys, we've been on air for quite some time now. I think this is as good a place as any to end and thank everyone for joining us. We have had
Sorry for the F-bomb.
That's well, let's just
Whatever.
not bring that up again. So we'd like to thank all of you for joining us tonight. It has been wonderful here on the Wild Wild West podcast. If you liked what we said, hated what we said, or are neutral, that's awesome. There's a comment section down below. Go ahead and comment on these videos. We also ask that you like, share, and subscribe to all of the channels. Again, links down below in that direction there. And guys, if you would like to follow any of us on Twitter or any social media platforms, my Twitter handle is right here. And you can find us each on Twitter and other social media. And guys, until next week, we'd like to thank you for joining the Wild West podcast. Have yourself a wonderful evening. Bye for now.